Heshaina Rabbah. What a day. A very special day. It's a very, very great day. The last day of Chol HaMoed Sukkot. Longer davening, so we're here a little bit later. But this is the culmination of the whole month of Tishrei in a certain way. It says in the Zohar, we stayed up last night till late into the night. We said Tehillim, we said Chumash Devarim. The Zohar says that Rosh Hashanah, everything is written. Yom Kippur, everything is sealed. But only on Hoshana Rabbah is there the Pit Katava, the good notes. Hashem hands the notes to the angels that are going to be the agents in carrying out whatever it is that needs to be carried out for every Jew for the year. So may Hashem give us all the blessings that we need. Everybody in our way. The good and sweet year that was definitely decreed on Yom Kippur should be carried out practically in the most manifest and revealed ways for everybody. Amen. But it's Rambam. Doesn't matter what day it is, we still got to do Rambam. So here we are. Hilchos Bechoros, Perek Sheni. The laws of the firstborn, chapter 2. Yesterday we got the general guidelines for the Bechor. Firstborn kosher animal becomes holy to Hashem. If all goes well and it's unblemished, it's offered as a sacrifice, eaten by the Kohanim. But if it gets a blemish, now it's no longer holy at all. It becomes the property of the Kohen. He can do whatever he wants with it. The question is, what classifies as a blemish? And that's going to be the subject of today's chapter, talking all about the blemishes. True, there's also tomorrow and a little bit the next day as well, about the laws relating to the mum of the Bechor. So the Rambam begins by saying the following. Halacha Aleph, Kol hamumim hakvuim hapoislin es hakadashim. All of the mum kavua. Mum kavua means a permanent blemish. It's a scar that cannot be undone. All of the permanent blemishes which would typically disqualify a sacrifice. V'nifdim aleihem. So much so that it would allow them to be redeemed. As we learned in the last book, when a sacrifice is disqualified, what do you do with it? You redeem it. And it goes to chulin, it becomes completely mundane, and at least in many respects. And then you use the money to buy another sacrifice. So all of those permanent blemishes, im nafal echad mehem babcher, if one of them develops on a firstborn animal, it now transfers into chulin, it can be slaughtered in any place, doesn't have to be offered as a sacrifice. We already explained all of those blemishes, we already enumerated all of them in the laws of entities that are forbidden to be offered on the Mizbeach, also in the last book of the Rambam. And if you look at the list, all the ones that are potentially able to be on a male animal, because a Bechor has to be a male, is 67. Now if you look, the commentaries deal with it over here, in those halachot, the Rambam actually lists what seems to be 73 mums that are possible to be able to be on a male animal, but that's because it also includes other types of animals, other species, and also doubtful animals like a tumtum or androgynous or hermaphrodite. But if you're talking about an actual firstborn kosher animal, male, the Rambam is correct. There's only 67 that are potentially able to develop on this animal. So that's as far as the mum kavua. One of the examples would be here, the animal simply missing a leg. It's just not going anywhere. It's not going to recover from that. That's a mum kavua. Halacha beis v'chol advarim shemaninu sham. All things that we enumerated in those halachas. She'ein hakarban min hamuvchar, where a sacrifice is not considered to have a complete mum, it's just not considered choice. In that category, if a sacrifice develops such a flaw, you don't offer it, but you also don't redeem it. Rather, in those cases, you would wait till it gets another blemish that certainly invalidates it. So too, if a firstborn develops one of these flaws, it cannot be slaughtered, it cannot be offered. It should stay in its current state until it gets a definite mum. What's an example of one of these things? When you have over here, if an animal's horns are shaved down, that's not muvchar, that's not choice. One example. And therefore with the Bechor, same thing. If that happened, you would leave it in limbo till it gets another blemish. So too, if a passing blemish, that means the one that's going to heal, It's just in a cast right now because its legs are broken, let's say, but it's not missing anything. It's going to heal. The Bechoros, while it's in this state, should not be slaughtered, should not be offered. It should graze till it gets a permanent blemish, and then it can be slaughtered based on that blemish. Halacha Gimel, v'chein, so too, im nevda b'avera. If a bechor was used in sin, it was part of bestiality, or it killed somebody, but it did so be'ed echad al pi abaylim, only at the testimony of one witness, or the owner, not the classic two witnesses, or it was put aside to be served as an idol, or it was actually worshipped as an idol, that kind of disqualifies the bechor from being offered. It should graze till it gets a regular blemish, as we've explained in the laws of prohibited entities to be offered on the mizbeach. When you have an animal born by C-section, and it's the firstborn, so both that animal and the animal that is born next, even if it's born naturally, both are not considered to be a firstborn. The first one, because it didn't go through the womb, it didn't open up the womb. And the second one, because it was preceded by a first one. So there was another child born to this animal, yes, not through the natural way, but there was an older sibling. Even if the first child was a female that went out through the wall, C-section, and a male emerged through the womb the natural way, so it's the first male being born naturally, still in a bechor, it's not considered to be a firstborn. Halacha hey, bechor shehu androgynos, if you have a firstborn which is a hermaphrodite, has both reproductive organs, not a male or a female. Ein by kedusha klal, it has no holiness at all. V'harehu kinekeva she'ein by lakoyin klum, it's like a female. Kohen gets nothing. V'oivdim by v'goizes by say kishar achulin, you can work with it, you can shear it. Even though these are prohibitions that apply to usual sacrifices, this is no holiness at all, like any other chulin, like any other mundane animal. If the animal was born with a covered genitalia, had is a fake bechor, now it's a doubt, because you don't know, it might be a male. It's a doubtful bechor. And the law is that you wait till it gets a blemish. The Kohen can't take it, he can't seize it, because maybe it's not his, maybe it's a female. But the owner has to treat it out of doubt as a potential bechor, so he has to wait till it gets a blemish and then he can eat it, the owner. And it doesn't matter if the animal is urinating in a place where a male would usually urinate or a female would usually urinate. We don't use that as an indicator of what type of animal this is. A tumtum, when it's covered, as long as it's covered, it's in doubt. If you have a female sheep which gave birth to an animal that looks like a goat, or a female goat gives birth to what looks like a sheep, this animal is exempt from the firstborn laws. Because it says, when describing the laws of the firstborn, it says it has to be a firstborn of an ox. Which means it and its child, its firstborn child, have to look the same. In this case, like an ox. But same thing for a sheep or for a goat. But if it did have part of the signs of its mom, it is considered to be a bechor, only insofar as making it holy, but not holy enough to be offered. It would now go into the category of a animal with a permanent blemish. There's no greater blemish than a change of the way it's created. It looks different. It has part of the identifying signs, so we consider it a bechor, holy enough to not be eaten regularly. You got to wait till it gets a blemish, but not holy enough to be offered. Even if you have a cow that gave birth to what looks like a donkey, and it has partially the signs of a cow, and that's considered to be enough of a bechor with regards to the Kohen. Since donkey species is governed by the laws of firstborn, albeit in a different way, but it's in the game of firstborn. But if a cow were to give birth to an animal that looks like a horse or a camel, even if it carries part of these signs of a cow, it's only a doubtful bechor. Therefore, it should be eaten by the owners. Once it gets a blemish, the Kohen cannot seize it. But if the Kohen did grab hold of it, we cannot extract it from his hand. This is a classic law in cases of doubt when it comes to monetary elements, entities. Whoever is in possession is considered to be the owner. So we don't take it out of the person who is currently in possession, but if the person does extract it, we cannot extract it from him. If somebody makes a blemish on a firstborn animal, since he did a sin, we fine him, we penalize him, and we don't allow him to just slaughter the animal because of this blemish, until another blemish develops naturally. If the sinner who made the blemish died, we do allow the son to slaughter this firstborn based on the blemish made by his father, because we only penalize the sinner, we don't penalize the son after him. What if you got the firstborn into a situation where it's going to get a blemish? You didn't directly cause it, but it's kind of indirect. Kigoyin, and the Rambam picks a very interesting example, and with the help of AI, we were able to get some photo of this. There it is. Very interesting case. Kigoyin shenasan dvela al oznai. Says the Rambam, the person placed a cake of figs on the ears of the firstborn, ad sheba kelev unetola, till a dog was attracted to the figs, came, took the cake, v'chasach oznai, and in the process of biting the cake, he also bit part of the ear of the firstborn. Or he walked the firstborn between some scraps of iron and broken pieces of glass, so its hand should be cut. V'nikta, and it was indeed cut. You didn't cut it directly, but you kind of caused it. Or you told a guy to make a blemish on it. That's still called somewhat causing the blemish. We're not going to let you get away with it and slaughter the animal based on that blemish. Zahar klal, this is the rule. Any blemish which was made with your consent, it's forbidden for you to slaughter the animal based on that. If it was done without your consent or without your awareness, then you could slaughter it because you had no involvement in creating the blemish. If a person announces, to the world he's talking, he goes, you know what? If this animal would have a blemish, I'd be able to slaughter it. Wouldn't that be wonderful? A neighboring guy hears it, he's your friend. He overhears what you say. He's like, you know what? The guy said if he has a blemish, he'll slaughter it. Let me help him. Let me make a blemish. The guy comes and makes a blemish. He can slaughter it for him based on this blemish, because it wasn't done with his awareness. He didn't say to the guy, do the mum. He announced it. The guy overheard it. That's not his fault. A little bit circumstantial. We see a person doing something that would cause a blemish. But then all we see is the result, that the animal has a blemish. We don't know if this was the blemish he intended to happen. So we have the beginning, we have the intention is clear, we have the end, we have the blemish. We don't know if one is linked to the other. Out of doubt, we say, you know what? You cannot slaughter the animal based on this. What's an example? Ketzad. What does this look like? He fed a sheep barley in a very narrow place that was lined with thorns, very easily scratchable and blemishable. While it was eating, its lip split because it was feeding it this barley in this thorny place. Even if the person was a learned Jew, typically religious, you cannot slaughter it based on this because maybe he was doing some kind of foul play. And the same applies in all similar situations. No allowances for blemishes that look intentional. Let's say there was a Bechor chasing a person. So he kicked it just to get it away from him. Even if he kicked it later, because of the chase that it had done earlier, to kind of like, let it know, give it a message, hey, don't chase me. And this kick caused the blemish. It could be slaughtered on this basis because the blemish was not done intentionally for the blemish, it was done as payback for the treatment that the animal was giving you. You have children playing with an animal and they blemish the animal by way of their play. Or a guy who made a mum on his own without any requests from the Jew. He can slaughter it based on this basis. If they did this blemish to permit it, you should not slaughter it based on that because they're trying to help you in the process of getting the Bechor being permitted. If a Bechor got a blood clot, Yakiz, you're allowed to let the blood. As was customary in those days, when there was blood clot, they would do like a little removal of blood, and that was supposed to release the bloodstream and make it easier. So you can do that. So long as you don't intend to make a blemish. And if it happens, if the bloodletting caused a blemish, it could be slaughtered on this basis. It's not considered to be an intentional blemish. You're allowed to purposely blemish a firstborn before it enters the world, while it's still a fetus. And then it could be slaughtered when it's born with a blemish. It could be slaughtered on this basis. A little bit cruel, but it's allowed. When do we say this? Nowadays, where there's no temple. Where anyways, it's going to be eaten in a blemished state. When the temple was standing, also that's forbidden. Because you're taking an animal which could be born without a blemish and be offered as a sacrifice, and you're denying it to Hashem by putting the blemish as a fetus. Therefore, you cannot do that. Halacha tezvav, eid shehed mipi eid acher. If a witness testifies based on hearsay from another witness, shemum zen nafal shleila das, that this blemish came without awareness. The person didn't mean it, but it's only secondhand testimony. Neman, it's still believed. Afilu isha neman eslemer. Even a woman who is typically not believed with testimony can say over here, she's believed to say, Bifanai nafal mum zen me'elav, I watched this blemish come on this animal and it came automatically on its own, the yishachet alav, and it can be slaughtered on that basis, and we'll judge it as a non-intentional mum, believing their testimony. Halacha tezayin kol hamumin haru'uyin lavi b'di adam. Any blemish which could be imposed by a man, neman haraya aleim leimar me aleim naflu. If a shepherd is shepherding a bunch of firstborn animals, he's believed to say that this blemish came on its own, v'leinasu bekavana, and it was not done intentionally, v'yishachet aleim, and the owner will be able to slaughter the bechor on this basis. When do we say this? If the shepherd was a Jew and the bechor was already in possession of the Kohen. But if the shepherd was a Kohen and the possession of the bechor was still in its original owner's hands, the Jew. So think about it. If the Kohen's going to be believed to say that the blemish came naturally, he's gaining. He will get the bechor. He's not believed. We suspect him, maybe he made the blemish to get the animal. So we don't believe him on that basis. If one Kohen testifies for another Kohen that the blemish came unintentionally, Neman is believed, we don't have to worry that they're in cahoots, helping each other. Because Kohanim, while they are suspect to impose blemishes on their own bechor, to allow them to eat it outside the temple, and therefore they aren't believed about themselves, that's true. But your friend could say testimony. We have a cardinal principle in Jewish law. Nobody sins for somebody else. You don't sin lishma, altruistically. You always have to have a benefit. If the Kohen is testifying for another Kohen, just trying to help him, there's no reason not to believe him. Even the person's own household, sons and household members, can testify about his bechor, not his wife, because his wife is like his own body. They're considered one entity. Anybody else can testify for the kohen, and it's not considered to be a helping game. Halacha Yudches, bechor shayabiyad kohen. A kohen is in possession of a bechor. He's holding on to it. The nafal by mum, a blemish comes, and one witness is helping him by testifying and saying that the bechor got the blemish on its own naturally. But we don't know if the blemish classifies as a blemish to be slaughtered. It's going to be tomorrow's topic, a whole thing about that. You have to have an expert sage to examine it, etc. So there's a blemish. We've established that it came naturally, but we don't know if it was shown to a sage or if it qualifies. Comes the Kohen who's holding it, and he says, you should know, I already showed this blemish to an expert, and he allowed it to be slaughtered. The Neman is believed. We don't have to worry, maybe he didn't show it, maybe it's really an unblemished bechor. Because Kohanim are not suspect to slaughter holy sacrifices outside. They're suspect to get the blemish onto it. But once it has the blemish, and that's been already established from the outside source of information, and the Kohen is saying, I got it green-lighted for slaughtering, that we don't have to worry about. It's an excision penalty. If you transgress the prohibition, you get excision. Kohen's not going to transgress that if he if he didn't really do what he said he did. Yutes, so too a Kohen is believed to say about a Bechor that has a mum, I got this firstborn from the Jew with the blemish. It didn't develop when I was owning it. We don't have to worry that maybe he actually did it himself. When you claim that another Jew did it, that's information that we could verify. It's going to come out. The truth will come out. He's worried they're going to ask the owners. He's going to say, it was unblemished when I gave it to him. So if a Kohen is saying information that's easily verifiable, we have no reason to discredit him, and therefore he's believed until proven otherwise.